Are we good?
How are you, Charlie? Good, Matt. How are you? Pretty good.
All right. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I will entertain a motion for the committee to convene into executive session in the main office conference room pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 5 for the purpose of 1, discussion regarding East Providence High School principal contract pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A1, discussion regarding Martin Middle School interim principal contract pursuant to 42-46-5A1, and discussion, proposal, contract, district designer services. And then we will consider and vote on a motion to adjourn and reconvene into open session. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Chonis. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Azanero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A1, any persons being discussed or affected were given advance notice of the executive meeting in writing and advise that they may require such discussion be held at an open meeting. No request has been made. We are in executive. We will meet down the hall. I'd like to call the public session to order. If we could stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence, please. I'd like to report that the only votes taken were 5-0 to adjourn executive and reconvene into open session. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is Student Liaison Grant Wozencroft.
Oh, yes, thank you. So we have
I'll
a
make a motion to seal the minutes.
we have a motion by Ms. Beauchesne to seal the minutes. Thank you very much.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Brandel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And that would be the next item, Mr. Wozencroft. Just hit that button. Is it green? Hold on, Ben's coming to assist.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. Good evening, everyone. There are quite a few important updates within the high school on dates coming up in the next few weeks. There is also some news regarding clubs and athletics. Firstly, returning from this Christmas break, students and staff welcomed our new principal, Mr. Black, to the high school community after his time at the middle school. We wish him the best of luck as he transitions into his new position. In club news, the EPHS Photography Club took a trip to Roger Williams Park Botanical Center. While there, students took fantastic photos, and the director of the Botanical Center was excited to share the outstanding work on their Facebook page. With the winter season underway, Townie athletics are proving to be strong competitors. Our track teams are sporting large rosters. The wrestling and hockey teams are also doing well. The boys and girls basketball teams are starting off strong this year. The students' hard work in the off-season is paying off on the court. Both coaches are enthusiastic and building a community. There are also some important dates coming up for the high school. The ASVAB will be administered on Thursday, January 13th, for high school students interested in pursuing a career in the United States Armed Forces. On Friday, January 14th, the senior class will be giving their senior project presentations. There will be a blood drive hosted by the high school on January 28th for those interested. For the senior class, graduation caps and gowns are now able to be ordered online. The due date for purchasing a cap and gown will be on February 26th. Yearbook sales will be ending on February 28th. And finally, in March, a driver's education course will be held. Students that are interested are now able to sign up through the CCRI website. Thank you.
Through the chair,
Please.
I would ask for a point of personal privilege to move up discussion item number 1, addition of William Stringfellow's name to the Coaches Recognition Tower, and Roman numeral 13, item 5, consider and vote to approve the addition of William Stringfellow's name to the Coaches Recognition Tower. Second passage. And I'll move that.
So we have a motion to move those items forward. If we can hold that motion just 1 second, Mr. Jonas, just before Grant, before you leave, I had a phone conversation with Mr. Silver earlier today. And I'll just kind of read, I asked him to kind of put it in writing so that I didn't misinterpret what it is that Grant is doing. But Grant Wollstonecroft is pursuing a social studies pathway that focuses on government and citizenship. Part of the requirement is an experiential learning component that requires hours outside of the school day. By providing a student perspective in regard to capital improvements, he will be able to fulfill the requirement and graduate with a pathway endorsement. So that being said, we're going to speak to an initiative that the district is looking to undertake. And with the school committee support, I would like to allow Grant to work with the members of the district and any of the contracted professionals that would be engaged in that process.
Nice.
So.
I'd also, I'd also like to say that I received a note from the General Treasurer of the state of Rhode Island. Grant went down and was a student representative from East Providence at Seth Magazina's announcement of the new construction bond. And they said they were very, very impressed by your presentation, Grant. I sent it out for all the school committee to view, and I congratulate you on a wonderful performance there, and thank you for representing East Providence so well.
So thank you, and we'll work through Mr. Silva and yourself and figure out who and when, and kind of follow along and follow the guidance of the two of you on what you need to complete that pathway. And so Mr. Chonas had a motion to move discussion item 14.1 and action item 13.5 forward. We had a motion for Mr. Chonas. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Brandel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm sorry? Oh, second by Mr. Brandel.
As to the addition of William Stringfellow's name to the coaches recognition tower, Mr. Bob Brady is here. If anyone has any questions of Mr. Brady, or Mr. Brady, if you want to come up, Bob. I think we had a thorough discussion at our last meeting, but Mr. Brady made himself available in case there were any other further questions of him. Bob, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, first of all, I want to thank you for the courtesy of advancing it on the agenda.
Thank you.
I am here to advocate that the committee approve Bill Stringfellow Jr.'s name to this coaches recognition tower, along with, I know that Coach Gorham is added to that, and that it's going to be some kind of a plaque or something that's going to be added to this tower that's going to be in an area in the athletics complex that is being named or has been named for Coach Gorham. So I'm encouraging the committee to approve that and to make it a fact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for coming, Bob.
Thank you. Okay. Said 5? You need 5 minutes? Okay, get a, just recess for 5 minutes, please.
Did we?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. O'Shane. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Charlie,
Thank you.
no, thank you. And if you could just work with them to make sure that the name is correct as you know, so that Sharon has the,
I'll make sure that we have all their
thank you.
correct spelling.
Okay.
And the next item is the consent agenda with communications, correspondence, homeschool requests, and approval of minutes for the December 14, 2021 executive session, school committee meeting, and regular school committee meeting, the December 21st, 2021 executive session, special school committee meeting, and open session, special school committee meeting, and December 13, 2021 building committee meeting.
Questions, comments, discussion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Chonas to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Brandel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is PTO, PTA, EPLAC reports.
I do have just a message from EPLAC. The next meeting will be January 26th at 6 o'clock at Martin Middle School. The time has changed from 6:30 to 6 o'clock, so if you plan on coming, make sure you're there. Also, we are beginning to work on the recognition forms to go out pretty soon, so look out for those. And that's all I have for EPLAC.
I don't see any other PTA, PTO representatives. Next item, please.
The next item is public comments 1, agenda items.
Thank you. So I have a Robert Brady. Was that?
I think you already spoke.
Yeah, that was Mr. Brady. That's who spoke for Mr.
Right.
Stringfellow. Okay. I thought. So that would be the only.
That's the only Bob Brady that.
Okay, next item, please.
The next item is the superintendent's report with the COVID update.
Yes, good evening. The first agenda item is a COVID update, and Dr. Strand is going to give you an update on the new CDC guidelines.
Good evening. We have, we released new guidance on Friday to parents, which will really keep students in school if they are close contacts. So the quarantine time for students and staff that are positive has been reduced to 5 days, and then they can return for the next 5 days. They need to make sure they're wearing a well-fitted mask. As far as isolation, if you are a close contact, before we were sending students home for 10 days if they were unvaccinated. Now we're switching to what we're calling monitor to stay, which means that students that are vaccinated would return as usual, and if they're unvaccinated, that they could still return to school, monitor for symptoms, and then as long as they have no symptoms, they would remain in school during that time. So this hopefully will reduce the amount of time students are out of school and the learning loss that's occurring when they're not in school. We will be sending out a nice flow chart that Ben and Alfred helped design today. We'll go out to parents tomorrow to make it easy to know what they need to do if a child is a close contact. where I think this will also really ease the burden that our nurses and principals are feeling. They were having to complete spreadsheets anytime students were close contacts and then call all of them with quarantine guidance. Now we'll be notifying parents if their child is a close contact by dojo, by letter, by email. But since they don't have to leave school and they don't have to stay home, then they'll just receive that with the information. So it's definitely going to, again, keep students in school. It's going to make sure that the nurses have more time to treat students and they're not just, completing spreadsheets and making phone calls. So, and we want our students in school. So we're hoping that this helps. Also, we definitely have seen a spike in numbers over the last 2 weeks, which we did anticipate with the holidays. Hopefully, we'll start to see the numbers decrease the next week or so.
Thank you. And I had talked to you about a vaccination clinic that we thought was going to be held this Thursday at the high school for our students. However, Captain Potvin was not able to make the arrangements for that, so he said it'll be sometime the following week. We're going to have it during the end of the day for any high school students who want to be vaccinated, and then we'll offer it so that the middle school can come over with their parents, and the elementary schools can also come over with their parents to be vaccinated if they choose to, and we'll advertise that as soon as possible. So we thank the fire department for working with us. We thank the mayor's office also for helping us sponsor this. All right, I'd like to give a little bit of information on the new upcoming construction bond. This is where you want me to talk about it, right?
Yeah, actually with the, let's do,
Yeah, we're done with COVID.
yeah, because we have the two gentlemen here with the motion from the committee, we'll move up for discussion and a vote, item 13.4, the proposal contract for district designer services, while we have Mr. Bradner and Mr. Jordan here. Is there a motion to move that item up?
I'll move the item, I'll make a motion to move the item.
Motion by Mr. Jonas.
Second.
Second by Ms. Azanero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? So yeah, if you wanted, yes. And then
Right.
Craig, we're going to have you
Yep.
come up as well.
Yes. Approximately 2.5 weeks ago, Mario Carino from the Rhode Island Department of Education came to East Providence. He mentioned the new construction bond, which is being sponsored, that Seth Magazina mentioned at his press conference last Thursday. This construction bond is $250 million. Actually, I think it's a little bit more than that. The last one was $250 million that helped us to build the high school, and this is the second part of that bond, which will be another at least $250 million. However, Mr. Carino said that they're going to do this a little bit different in dispersing the money. Number one, he said that the release of this money will be based on plans for those schools that have been targeted in the Jacobs report to be in the greatest need. It just so happens that Martin Middle School is the second school in the state with the greatest need as far as improvement is concerned. And he felt that this was a good time that we might like to look at all of our buildings in the district in light of this new construction bond moving forward. Our reimbursement rate for the high school was 54.5. Our reimbursement rate has gone down to 48.5 for this year. And the following year, next year, it's going to go down to 42.2, I think it is. So the time is right if East Providence is looking at doing any further construction on buildings in the district, because your rate is still 48.5. The incentives, which the high school received 20% in incentives, are back, and actually there are more incentives this time than they were the last time. So if you look at getting 20% of the incentives, you're at 68.5 reimbursement for any construction items that we would be doing in the district. So now I'm going to turn it over to Craig, if you would come forward and talk about that a little bit further as far as the monetary aspects.
Good evening, everyone. So as the superintendent said, we were approached by the Department of Education. Actually, it was at the ribbon cutting where the first conversation started. But so they came to us and really wanted us to really to take a look. And Martin was the specific school that they were targeting. One of the areas that they're looking at for this new bond money, so if you remember the last time for the first bond, the PAYGO money that they talked about. So the PAYGO money was distributed by a formula that RIDE had developed. So the $60 million that we got up front cash. With this next bond, they're changing how they're allocating the PAYGO money. The PAYGO money is going to be distributed based upon the need that's identified within the project. And while this number is not confirmed, but we are looking at a much more significant number for PAYGO money, could be close to 30 million. So when you look at a possible 30 million PAYGO money up front, coupled with a 68.5% reimbursement rate, we had talked about it and felt that, you know, maybe it is time to start to take a look, and that's all. Superintendent, is there anything else that you wanted me to?
No, I just would say that this particular construction bond, you're probably not going to see anything like this for another 20 years. It was 20 years ago that North Kingstown High School was the last school to be built, high school to be built in the state of Rhode Island. Again, because of your reimbursement rate going down to 42.2% from 54.5 over the next 2 years, your 48.5% is the best reimbursement you're going to get for a while. It's a bad thing and it's a good thing, because that means that East Providence's wealth is going up, so therefore your reimbursement goes down. As a community, you have families moving in, and things are going quite well in the city of East Providence. So that's something to consider at this point in time. So what we'd be looking for, I know that I have gotten many requests for example, Waddington, and I know the school committee has gotten emails for Waddington on the safety there with the open classroom, similar to Martin. So that's why we'd like to do a district-wide assessment of the schools in the city of East Providence.
Good, Craig? Oh, there you are. So we're being presented to consider and approve the contract for the district designer services, right? So as part of the stage one in any process, it requires an assessment of the district, prioritization of needs, and then, submission to RIDE for that, which is where we are at right now. So can you kind of speak to, the proposal is to approve a contract with AI3 for those services. Can you speak to the process as far as the bid and how we arrived
Sure.
to this recommendation?
Sure. We had actually started a process in 2019. And so we did an RFQ. So we did a request for qualifications, and that was on the market in August of 2019. Excuse me one second while I pull up my computer. So there were, at that time, and it was a process that we had apprised the school committee of at that time. So actually, it was in July of 2019 when the RFQ was on the market. And then in August, the proposals were received. There were 8 proposals that were received. A team of individuals reviewed and scored the 8 submissions that were received, and we selected 4 out of the 8 to come in for an interview, and that was on Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. We interviewed 4 firms at that time, and AI3 was the highest scoring firm as a result of the interviews from that night.
Through the chair?
Please.
Just, Craig, so that I can understand this, this means that there is no other process that we need to go through? There's no other bidding process? That
Correct.
was the process?
Correct. And when you look at when you looked at what the RFQ stated, it really outlined the pieces that were needed for stage 1 and for stage 2.
Just so I can understand it, how long are we committed to AI3?
So there was not a contract that was signed other than we did a formal award of the RFQ. I think that was at the October 2019 school committee meeting. But we did not execute any type of a formal document with them at that time, other than we did formally award the RFQ.
Okay, so again,
Yep,
is there no end date to that RFQ?
So I would,
Just asking, because I don't know if it's, I want to make sure that our process is
yep.
transparent.
Yep, so we had at that time, after the school committee vote, and we had decided at that time to put the brakes on the project to take a pause, because there were many other things that were going on, and we slowly, I think, realized that it was going to be a much larger project than what we thought. So we had informed AI3 at that time that we were pausing on the project and on the work. So I would say that we are just picking up and continuing on with what we had said that we were going to do.
Well, that answers my question. But it's kind of an open-ended relationship then with AI3?
For this specific work. So we don't have an open-ended relationship just for anything that's within the district, just in terms of the specific RFQ that was done in 2019 for Martin Middle School. Yes.
Okay, but that's the only work that we're looking at right now, correct?
Correct.
Well, so clarification on that, that's the focus, my understanding, that's the focus of the RFQ, but the requirement is a district-wide assessment, CIP, capital improvement plan. So to do the stage 1 or 2, and I think it's for stage 1, am I correct in that? That it's required that they look at all buildings, but the driver for that RFQ was because Martin was the identified or kind of the targeted building at that time.
And that that review of all the buildings, that has to be done every 5 years. And the last time, I think it was Slam you had who did that. And so the time is actually up.
So we're
Right.
due to do, regardless, sorry.
That's okay.
Regardless of any project, we're due up for a district-wide
Correct.
CIP
Correct.
as that 5-year cycle.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's information that we need to provide to the Department of Education.
And further clarification, please, through the chair.
Please, no, please.
Nothing happens unless the city council approves any action, correct?
Correct.
We are going into the same process that we did in this very building, for this very building.
Correct.
Nothing happens unless the city council approves whatever the school committee recommends.
Correct. And as the process goes on, all that's doing is just locking things in so that at a future date, whenever that is, should the city decide to move forward, the reimbursement rate, the incentives, which before we didn't know about until the end of the project, we will now know what incentives we will qualify for at the beginning. So all this is doing, this whole process will sort of lock things in. It doesn't commit the city to anything. That's going to be up to the appropriate parties. But in terms of the Department of Ed, it's just locking everything in.
And through the chair, the CIP that we're talking about has to be performed, executed before we move forward, correct?
Correct, it's part of the stage 1, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, stage 2.
So if we want to do any work, we have to perform the
Correct.
CIP.
Yeah, stage 2, so you won't get RIDE's official approval to support any project until stage 2 acceptance. Is that correct, Sam? So at that point, Charlie, we'll have that CIP for the district information regardless. So we'll have the architectural evaluation report suggestions for our district's buildings for us to prioritize today, tomorrow, going forward, and we'll meet that CIP 5-year.
So this CIP will be a fact-finding tour for every school building in the city.
Correct. Correct.
Understanding that Martin Middle School is probably one of the worst buildings in the state, and there are other issues throughout our district. We are committed to performing the CIP, and the RFQ is still valid, and that's one of my points. Do we need to perform another RFQ, or is this still a valid, functioning RFQ?
In my viewpoint, I would say that the awarding of the RFQ is still valid.
I have no qualms about what our needs are. We have severe needs throughout this school district, and I think only recently have we really started to address the needs of the school district and the infrastructure. But I just want to make sure that the process is clean, transparent, and that the public understands what we're considering doing for the betterment of our school system.
Yep.
The long-term betterment of our infrastructure and every building in this district. Thank you.
And so do we have a plan for how we're going to approach the city with what we're basically asking them to eventually do if we go along with this?
So we had a a call last week with the mayor, Malcolm in finance, Craig was on there, superintendent was on there, Mr. Fazioli, so more of an informative and with full support from the city side, basically with the commitment, request and commitment from the school district to say absolutely more so than with the high school project, there would be complete conversation, transparency, discussion to the detail of what the findings are, what the recommendations are, and discussion on prioritization. So there's a commitment and a recognition per that conversation that we need to stay on top of the needs of the district. There was a commitment from the school department to convey those findings, and so that everyone is looking at the financials and understanding the capabilities from a fiscal standpoint of what the city can undertake and what the school district needs, and where to best put those resources. So yeah, they're aware, in the know, and will be so, if anything comes out of this, because there's also that the reality is that regardless of the findings, it could, to Charlie's point, right, that if it lacks that full support from the city on anything that we may want to move forward on, it stalls, because RIDE will require school committee, council, mayoral support on anything moving forward, so.
Through the chair, and Craig, maybe you can answer this too. My question goes back to if and when the process begins, that we go stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, et cetera, and we're fortunate enough to get the city's approval with this, and the new building committee moves forward, and with the superintendent and the school district, what is our, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but I got to throw it out there. What is our commitment to AI3, for example? In other words, do we then get an opportunity, like we will put out for bid the other work? Does this mean we've already selected our architects?
I'll let Sam speak to the detail of that. So yeah, the short answer is no, but Sam, if you could.
Just a question.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid question.
I mean, I want to make sure, again, the process is the process.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to offend anybody out there, I'm just saying, I want to be sure that the process is being followed. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to let Sam take this part.
Good evening, Sam Bradner, Peregrine Group. We're not easily offended, so all questions are good questions. Just to respond to that question specifically, the contract in front of the committee this evening is just for stage 1 and stage 2 services. So I think similar to your previous procurement processes that you've gone through, you have reserved the right to continue with the selected team, but you also reserve the right to go back out to the street. So you're not compelled to go one direction or the other when you conclude this step, which will be done in September when you submit, and then it'll go through the RIDE approval process in Q4 of this year. So you still have that freedom to make a decision to pivot, to go back on the street to pivot, or to stay with the team that you have today. So no commitments either way, if that answers the question for you, Mr. Jonas.
Yes, Sam, thank you. That is part of my question, or a partial answer to my question. But for example, I'll use the building committee as an example. Now, I'm sure we'll have some of the same people on other building committees, like the gentleman to your left there, Mr. Enos, and Mr. Fiola, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. The building committee that exists right now for this building is still active, is it not? And it is still working on the building itself, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not a 2-4 here. We're separating all of the work also.
I can't speak to your governance of your committees, so I
Right.
think that would be a question for the school
But
committee to-
but I'm just saying that, the building committee is still active, working on this
That
this
is
school,
correct.
the punch list for this school, and finishing up the East Providence High School.
Correct. Probably through the end of this year as we're wrapping up all the work in the front, the closeout of all the contracts and all the turnover processes that will happen between the district, Gilbane, AI3, Peregrine.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
So this is basically solely an analysis of what the needs are going to be at each of our schools, right? Or do we also get like a price tag analysis to go with it?
I'd be happy to answer that. So as part of the stage 2, so stage 1 is definition of need. So that's the assessment of the facilities. Some of that work will overlap into stage 2, which is not uncommon. Stage 2 is where you define the solution to the need, and part of that requirement to submit to RIDE is a cost estimate associated with all the work that kind of comes through that iterative design process. So you would come out with that total project cost estimate. So that would include, similar to what happened with the high school, it would be your construction costs, your design costs, your furniture, all those items that you've probably seen in some of our previous budgets. And then that would then be what would be submitted to RIDE, and RIDE would go through that, evaluate that against their cost criteria, and, either approve at that number, or sometimes they will come back and make adjustments based on how they see the costs against their trends that they have in the marketplace.
All right, thank you.
I just have a follow-up question to that, because that was also my question, Max. But we would reconvene again for after step 1 is completed, right? And get kind of like a breakdown of what your findings were before moving on to step 2?
Yeah, so it's a little bit fluid, but I think that, that again, that's your governance about how in-depth involved the school committee would want to be. Obviously, the team is there to report out to those bodies on a recurring basis as needed to ensure that decision-making is transparent, it's understood. As with any design process, there'll be, work that has to happen offline to kind of build the information baseline, and then come back, define that to the group, and then make that next step. The stage 1 is a quick turn. It's due on the 15th of February. And then that would allow you then to merge into that stage 2 process, which is really the bulk of the work when you think about all the design analysis and all the evaluation that has to happen for each of the buildings in the district.
Thank you.
Greg, one last thing for you. Do you have a copy of the RFQ that was awarded to AI3?
I sure do.
Okay, would you mind just reading it to me, please?
Not at all. Not at all.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Have you got it with you?
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. So with that, I will entertain a motion for item 13.4. Consider vote to approve proposal contract for district designer services.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Can you say that again? I can't.
Item 13.4, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract for district designer services.
So moved?
I'm sorry, was that so moved?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Azanero. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a question on the motion. I'm sorry, Max just seconded the motion. If we have an existing contract now, correct? We do not.
Not
But the
for-
RFQ was awarded to AI3 to do this, to do the CIP?
So it was awarded and never contracted. So we had, and I vaguely remember that meeting, but we kind of mid-meeting said, you know what, we don't have the appetite, not the appetite, but the ability right now to get into that project. So it stalled in its place. So there was never any contract voted on or put in place. It was simply an award of the RFQ to identify them as a recipient, but the terms of any agreement were never, put on paper and voted and approved.
Okay, and the last thing I have is, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the people on the building committee and the school committee have all been happy with the work that AI3 has done.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a question.
That's a true statement, no, that's, no,
I would.
I'm making a statement, but I.
I would say that their expertise in school buildings it has shown, and I think we kind of spoke to it when you talked about the whether or not we were committed with one firm over another. And I think when this high school project started, the initial design that was presented to the public had that kind of, that building with the 4 or 5 wings going out and so forth. And then we actually went out to bid, and that's where AI3 came into the fray and other firms with the design that we're sitting in right now. So and that's the point where they came in and they brought in so much more academic input into the design and the functionality of the building, and I think we continue to see that. I would defer to superintendent and assistant superintendent Ferrand to kind of verify and validate that. It's more than just a building. There's a feedback that's from the academia.
Yes, it is. Actually, East Providence High School has received several awards and recognitions in various architectural magazines as being a state-of-the-art 21st century high school. We've had, I think, almost every district in the state, Mr. Montero, tour the building, who's thinking of building a high school. They come in, they want to see East Providence High School first before they start their project. I can name a few. There's Newport, Warwick's coming in, Pawtucket is coming in, Central Falls has come in. Who else has come in? Cranston has been in. Just so many high schools using this as a starship for their own construction projects moving forward. So I think we're very happy with that.
And having nearby references to actually go and visit that were recent, as we spoke, right, about the moratorium with being no new schools in the state since North Kingstown. Being able to go just 40 minutes down the road, or depending on how fast you drive, to Plymouth, and see some of their work firsthand and speak to folks that were in the building. That was, I think, a huge benefit. And again, I'm speaking for members of the building committee that actually work in the building, and the feedback that they provided, department heads and so forth. The feedback continues to be positive.
I have heard nothing but good things about AI3 and their performance in the past several years, and I feel comfortable with AI3. My concern is that we are doing everything transparently and according to the rules. I had a conversation today with our school committee attorney, Mr. Scungio, and I feel comfortable that we are moving forward correctly and legally. And again, I commend AI3 for the work that they've done. But I am always diligent in making sure that we're following the process to the letter, because this is
this is a chance that we have to make our schools better in East Providence. And I think it's important that we follow this. Thank you.
Agree, thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Azanero and a second by Mr. Brandel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Sam, if you don't, can I have you stick around? I'll have you go through the building report since I have you in the building. Don't pack up. You can run through it a little bit more. Jim can go. Thank you.
The next item is the Director of Human Resources report with resignations, retirements, leave of absences, non-renewals, and recalls.
So I don't know how many of you have met Mark Williamson. He's our new Director of HR that'll be coming to the podium right now, and we welcome Mark.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
to meet
Chairman,
you.
members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here. I was really honored to go through the interview and selection process and really looking forward to my time. I'm in my second week, so be gentle.
You're still here, so that's
good.
Yeah, I get that question every day. Are you coming back tomorrow? So far, that's the case. As far as my report this evening, we had resignations of Tracy Brum Ariel, who was a paraprofessional at Kent Heights, and that was effective December 17th, 2021. We also had a resignation of Toby Gibbons, principal at the East Providence High School, and that was effective December 23rd, 2021. We also had retirements. I know one of these individuals that retired in December was mentioned, I'm told, at your last meeting, but I did want to read just a testimonial regarding her, and that individual was Wendy Coogan. Wendy retired from the East Providence School District effective December 31st of 2021. She's worked for the district for a total of 31 years. Wendy began working in September of 1990. At that time, she was hired as a grade 6 math teacher for the Orlo Avenue Elementary School. As a result of grade 6 moving to the middle school, Wendy spent the rest of her career at Riverside Middle School, which is the position she has retired from. The other retiree, which is listed on your agenda this evening, is Eileen Eklund. She retired from the district effective December 31st, 2021. She worked for the district for a total of 19 years. She began working in September of 2002. At that time, she was hired as a special education teacher for the Riverside Middle School. During her 19 years with the school department, she has worked as a special education teacher in both the Riverside and Martin Middle Schools. Her most recent position that she has retired from is as a resource teacher for Riverside Middle School. And I certainly wish both of them the very best in their retirement.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, have a motion to accept.
I know, don't just do it.
Yeah, let's just do it right. So motion to accept the resignations, even though I don't believe we need to.
I'll make the
but-
motion to accept the resignation.
Motion by Ms. Boshain, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Azanero, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And a motion to accept Ms. Uckland's retirement. We had already done the first one last meeting.
Oh, yes.
Ms.
I'll make the
Coogan.
motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Boshain, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Azanero, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. So, thank you, sir, and again, welcome. We'll hope to see you again. And I know we keep moving stuff around, but in the interest of, I know Craig's a little long-winded, so if we can have the building report, that way Sam can leave. We'll move it up just one item, item 11. Have a motion to move that up, please.
I'll make the motion to move it up.
Motion by Mr. Brando. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Boshain. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. And Ben, I don't know if you can pull up that, do you have the building report in that file? Thank you. It's all yours, Mr. Bradner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Chairman.
do it so much better than I do, so I figured they'd appreciate that since you were in the building.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Sam Bradner again with Peregrine Group. I'll give you just a brief overview of the update that we provided at Monday evening's building committee meeting. As I think everybody's aware, you know, the focus has really shifted to all the site work to the west of the building, and the improvements that have been happening out there since we turned over the existing building back at the end of the summer, demolition, and then you know, the proposed improvements that are happening on a regular basis. We continue to have Gilbane working in the building, working through punch list. And others, you know, are just still sorting through and shaking out, as we saw this evening, with some of those elements. So I think that'll be an ongoing process, just as they learn the systems of the building and making sure that those systems meet the need of the operations on a day-to-day basis, and also for functions like this, sporting events, other academic events that happen throughout the building. Construction, as we mentioned, has slowed. We are hovering just below 90% complete on work in place, and that number is probably going to creep along through the winter, just again because there's a significant less amount of trades that are out here. The colder weather is prohibiting a lot of that site work from continuing, especially after, say, a storm that we had last week, and then we do have that ongoing punch list work. Ben, if we could just maybe flip to page 3, if you wouldn't mind. One of the items that we discussed at the building committee meeting on Monday night was just a refreshing for both the building committee and really the community on what the remainder of the work is going to look like. So for those who don't read plans a lot, you know, the white building, the white rectangle there is the building we're in right now, and we've improved up to that kind of access road along the front of it. So all the work to the top or to the west between the building and Pawtucket Avenue is everything that you see out there happening on an ongoing basis. And Ben, if you could just maybe scroll through these, if you wouldn't mind, sir. These are some of the early rendering images of what the entry sequence would look like, some of the fields would look like, night and day. And then what you'll see now is the actual implementation of a lot of those elements that are happening out on the site. While the cold weather has hit us recently, the site crews were really able to do a lot of work almost all the way through the end of December. So getting footings in place, retaining walls, all those key elements that are supporting most of the athletic programming that's happening on that exterior of the property. And then we continue, like I mentioned, to do work inside the building, punch list, outstanding items that maybe weren't complete at the turnover.
Sam, before that, Ben, I'm sorry, just go back to that first drawing of the front space, because I just want to draw attention to the parking that is on that drawing that does not currently exist, which would be, if you can use that cursor, so you have that large section to the right of the rotary, that does not currently exist right now, and just reiterate that the total parking on this campus will exceed what we had on the prior campus. So I know that there's been some discussion, some questions out in the community, because to your point, and I was glad that it came up last night to have this presented, just seeing the finished product and what was still left to be put in place. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that, this rendering was done probably during the height of the design process or maybe towards the end. So not a perfect depiction of what we will actually implement on the ground, but I think it's a great kind of 20,000 foot level of the improvements that are going to happen out there. So, a couple things are shifting or have shifted since that design process, but I think overall, that design, the entryway, the fields, the parking, and the new entry and exit ways, which I think are critical. The community, I think, has learned how to move through the property as it sits today. That will not be the final condition. So we'll have to learn together as we go through the various steps of opening up new roadways, closing existing roadways to get to this final state for the beginning of next academic year. From an overall budget standpoint, the project remains in, I think, a very good position. We continue to evaluate items that were maybe part of the original scope, but excluded from the buyout of the budget because that was subject to meeting, kind of the budget and the project expectations and standards. So some of those extra items, and we've talked about those before, the ability to say do all the artificial turf on the front, the clock tower, which has had a lot of conversation with this group as well as with the school building committee. So those are being implemented. But even with those additional items coming against the budget, we still believe we are going to be below budget at the conclusion of the project. And what we're trying to do on a regular basis now is really go through, establish that list of outstanding items that haven't been included, evaluate those with the school building committee and the working group that does a weekly procurement discussion to ensure if something should or should not be included, and then going through that step, always with an eye towards preserving the overall project budget of that 189.5 that was approved by the voters and approved by the various bodies at the city. So overall, again, we're probably about 80, if I can just get to the bottom. Ben, if you wouldn't mind going to the second to last budget page. Sorry. There we go. So overall, and this is really expended to date or paid to date, so it's a little bit different than actually implemented on the ground. But we're about 83% complete from a cost, spent to date versus total budget to date, which is, again, the building consumed a lot of that percentage, and now we'll kind of go through the slow, methodical march between now and the end of 2022 for the completion of the overall project.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions by the committee.
Any questions from the committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Next item, please.
The next item is the Director of Finance report by Craig Enos.
Good evening again.
So,
We are 2 months into the new fiscal year. I think this will probably be the briefest report I've ever had, because there really are not any items of note significantly within the first 2 months of the fiscal year. I would like to point out on bottom of page 2 for the revenue, so when the school committee voted last month on the rates for the rentals, so we do have a little bit of income, $3,200 that has come in for the rental income, which is good. We haven't seen that money come in that line item in a couple of years now. So already 2 months in, and we have $3,200. And in terms of fiscal year 21 for the fiscal year that ended, so I should have a final number for you for next month. So we continue to pay invoices that are showing up. So at the February meeting, I will be able to give you the projected unaudited end of the year numbers for you. Okay? And for tonight, for the finance report, that's all I have. Are there any questions?
no?
Good. So the other piece that I had sent out to all of you was the substitute report. So this is I'm gladly turning this over to the new Director of Human Resources for next month and his team, but I did work with his team on this to try to put together some information that I thought that you had wanted to see. So what the report shows by school, it shows the various numbers of the day-to-day substitutes that we have. So as an example, for the high school, during the month of December, there were 8 day-to-day subs. And in the next column, it has the number of days that particular day-to-day substitute employee worked. On the bottom part, it has the number of East Providence retirees that have come back to work in that particular school. So as an example, for the high school, we have 2 retirees that came back. One worked every single day during December. They worked for the 16 days, and then we had another retiree that worked for 14 days. And then the bottom the bottom portion for each of the schools, I figure you would want to know what the unfilled positions were for that particular school for the month. So as an example, now this is the report that we generated out of ASOP. So for the teachers, as an example, during the 16 days, there were 121 unfilled positions during that time frame. So, and we broke that apart by each school.
Craig, do you know if that's, I know it says unfilled positions over those 16 days, but is that periods or complete days? Like, you know what I mean? You know.
I think that varies. It could be a full day absence, or it could be a half day absence. So if you had someone who took so we either do a half day or a full day.
Through the chair,
Please.
will we get, Craig, either from you or from the HR, this report next month?
Yes, you're going to get it every month. And we had already, after we did this, we had already talked about ways that we can improve it for next month, and giving you some charts. And so I think that will make it a little bit easier to read. But it will still contain all of the information. And I guess, does this contain the information that you want to see every month?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
it has
good.
some.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, yeah, I figure you want to know, day-to-day subs, the retirees broken down by each school, so you could see how many retirees were working in each school, and then you've got the information as to what the unfilled positions were. Okay, good.
Through the chair.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And this could be for either the superintendent or either of the assistant superintendents. Are we running into any problems with coverage of classes due to the absentees? In other words, do we have enough coverage? No. No, so are we, how do we do that? Are we providing covers, as they used to say?
Oh, yeah. So at the high school, for example, during a teacher's prep time or their common planning time, they would be asked to take a class and cover if we're short. Yes. Sometimes classes have to be combined, and the teacher takes on, half of one class, and another teacher in the elementary level takes on another half. But it's happening all over the state, Mr. Jones.
No, that's, I'm sure it
cover.
is.
Yeah, we
I just,
cover. So no one's been left without someone in front of the classroom.
Well, that's
Even the
one of my
principals
concern
have
is,
gone
yes.
in to cover. Yeah. even the
okay, I know there were past practices where a teacher might get a $25 bonus for
They do
covering
get-
a class.
They do get extra money for it.
Okay, so that's still happening.
That's still in effect.
Yeah,
in
Charlie,
their
that's all in the
contract.
teacher's contract.
It's all in their contract, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
just,
do.
Just wanted to check on that. That's another area, the coverage issue is
Correct.
important too.
Yep, and so just for your knowledge, so on the first page of the finance report, account 51336, class coverage overage. So it's about $3,200 to date, so. Okay,
Thank you.
great, so we will, so
just
the
wanna-
Human Resources Department will be sure to provide this information again for next month.
I just want to make a point. The important part of that one is our class coverage is already at 67% for that line item. I don't think I've seen that before this early on, so.
Yep. Last year at this time, it was 2,400.
Yeah.
So,
Teachers out, yeah.
that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Enos? Okay. Next item, please.
The next item is, it would be the discussion item for number 2, residency policy.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm bringing this up after much discussion, and so the residency policy was last passed this past August of 2021. That's the policy. Now, there is also the residency requirement of residency of students. That's in the packet first. So I'm bringing this up, there's no policy on here tonight, but this is a discussion so that all of us here can discuss it. So who'd like to go first?
Well, I know I had absolutely asked, but I'll, okay, I'm just trying to pull this up. So, without pulling up my details while I look for it, one of the things that has come up is, where there are maybe gaps of exposure to enforcing and ensuring that the taxpayers' dollars are supporting students that are, residents of the city. It's always, it's an ongoing thing from day one that I came into this seat. We talked about out of district and how do we, ensure that, or at least do the best that we can, and we implemented that annual residency form that this is the first year I haven't had to fill it out with both my kids being graduated, but there was, one of the things that stood out is there's a caveat to that form where in the instance where the parent or guardian maybe is staying with a family member or is in a situation where they don't have a rental bill, lease agreement, something in their name to establish residency, the owner of the property could submit an affidavit, basically affirming that that person did actually reside at that address. But that's kind of where it stayed. There were no consequences to falsifying the affidavit. And so I just thought in general, looking at assigning some financial responsibilities or consequences that might equate to what we consider the cost of educating a child in the city. And the other piece is, for residency approval, it's not just the address. I believe there are 2 utility bills that were required. But on that affidavit option, the affidavit is by itself the only thing required. So I would look at actually something from that address in the person's name, the person that is submitting that affidavit, because if I'm a landlord and Charlie, I'm saying that you live at my residence so that your child can go to the school, but actually Max is renting the space and the bill is in his name. Well, if I'm submitting the affidavit and they say, okay, well then show us the utility bills as well, it's got to be in my name or yours, so I think that we can maybe tighten that up and help our schools put a little bit of a handle on that. So that was just one piece that kind of glared at me.
And I'm assuming by bringing this up, we may have a handful of this going on, or
Yes,
numerous
yes.
of this going on.
Yes, and that's what's frustrating is, in the midst of all of this, the COVID and everything else, our administrators are trying to, do their part to make sure that the resources in their buildings are going to the appropriate students. And they want, obviously every student matters, but at the end of the day, right, we're trying to be responsible with the money that's been put in our care. So they're chasing people down and they're kind of just running in circles with, I figure if we could just put a little bit more bite to the process, make it a little bit more controlled, then it might be restrictive enough to deter someone from trying to find a workaround. If it's 1 or 2 people, that's 1 or 2 less that our principals, deans, and other administrators and central admin have to chase down. So
Diana does a lot of the chasing, principals report. It used to be easier when you mailed things because they would be returned to you. I'm sorry. The letters would be returned to you in the mail, but now everything is email. So you send an email, you don't really know what city or town it's going to, so it's a little more difficult, as opposed to when we used to mail things out and the letter would be returned, do not live here, address unknown. So, but we do have, how many cases, Diana, do you think we've had this year like this? Maybe 5 or 6? Oh, 10.
She said no more
to
than
this
10.
point. No more than 10 so far this year.
5 or 6.
So you want to add that
Yeah, why not, we can come up with some kind of,
wording?
Jenny, you okay with that? Yeah, come up with some kind of writing that would.
There's other school districts that have affidavits of that nature. We would just have to, adjust that to fit East Providence and then just add an additional line that gives that, disclaimer of, you assume the financial responsibilities in the event that you are falsifying this information. I haven't seen that disclaimer in other affidavits, so I guess we could definitely speak with Ben and seeing, what the parameters are and the verbiage of that. But there's definitely other school districts that have affidavits
Yeah,
similar to
and I did run that by our counsel, Mr. Scungio, and, he, on the surface, without digging too deep, didn't see any issues. He did say he hadn't seen it, but he understood the need and didn't see any issues with that. And then, again, to that, I would add the utility bills, or whether it's utility or what have you, what other are the forms that would be, I know there's a list between the lease agreement, phone bill, or electric bill.
But then
Cor-
it says
yeah.
any other document, so I think we could come up with some acceptable, at least all of us, and then,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if somebody's crashing on a couch for half a year or something, they're not gonna have a utility bill or anything like that. But cell phone or something like that, yeah, but if we ask for something else, that,
Right. But it's the ones that are just flat out falsifying.
Correct.
And, again, we can't, so, okay.
okay, sounds
Well,
good.
that was,
We'll bring it up
thank you.
at the next meeting.
Next item, please.
The next item is action items.
First is consider and vote to approve bill lists.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Chonas, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Brandel, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consider and vote to approve East Providence High School principal contract. Motion to approve by Ms. Boshain, do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Azanero, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consider and vote to approve Martin Middle School interim principal contract. Motion by Ms. Boshain, do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Azanero, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We handled items 4 and 5. So 6, actually, Mr. Enos, you're up for 6 through 12. And actually, then you can speak to 13 separately, please. And
Sure.
so 6 through 12, we have AI3 invoices, Peregrine invoices, Gilbane, Stephen Turner Inc., Thausch Engineering, and then you have construction invoices for the high school and FF&E. And again, all of these were approved by the building committee last night.
Yep. So AI3 basic services, $29,484.68. Gilbane Building Company, $1,248,177.50. National Grid, $5,944.39. Peregrine Group LLC, $59,000. Stephen Turner Inc., $8,486.35. Thilsch Engineering, $1,040, for a total of construction invoices for payment, $1,352,132.92. Moving on to furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology. B&H Photo, $15,497.19. Block, $3,781.38. Certified Connections, $3,396.84. Custom Computer Specialists, $17,840. Dell, $17,458. Monitor Equipment, $9,961. Newark, $12,736.80. NextGen, $3,265.30. Norfolk Power Equipment, $15,540.84. Northeast Beverage, $1,850. Portland Pottery, $4,666.64. Robert H. Lord, $18,296.50, excuse me. Sergeant Welch, $15.01. School Furnishings, $9,248.87. Uline, $4,200.30. WB Mason, $154,053.21. Woodcraft Supply, Inc., $890.26, for a total for furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology of $292,698.14.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
A move to approve?
Motion by Mr. Chonis. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Azanero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And last item, Mr. Enos. Yeah. Your legs aren't that long to be walking back and forth. You should probably stay in one spot. Now, just in case there are any questions, the last item is consider vote to approve to go out to bid for the window projects for Silver Spring, Orlo, and Riverside Middle School.
Yes, thank you. So we have been working with the consultants, the architect firm from Studio Jade, and as well as the consultants from Jensen and Hughes on the replacement window projects for the Riverside Middle, Orlo Avenue Elementary, and Silver Spring Elementary School. The normal process is that I would come to you for approval to go out to bid, and then we go out to bid. The documents, we have everything submitted into the Department of Education. We had a couple of correspondences that we had to address with the Historical Commission, which we have worked with the City of East Providence on. So what I'm asking for you tonight is just to simply to get your approval to go out to bid, because the bid document should be ready within the next few days. And then this way, my goal is that at the February meeting that we will have those results to come to you with a recommendation to award. We're hoping that we can award all three schools as one, is what our goal is. So,
Any questions?
thank you very much.
Do we have a motion?
A motion to approve?
We have a motion by Ms. Azanero to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Chonis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item is public comments to non-agenda items.
Okay, there are none. Next item, please.
Next item is announcements.
I just want to thank, because this is the only public place I can do that, everyone who came out for the COVID testing. So a lot of almost all the building principals were there. The deans, Sharon, Mr. Crowley, Nate Cahoon, like Joel and I were there, superintendent, assistant superintendent's daughter. There was just a lot. Through that, we serviced over almost 900 people, and were able to catch a lot of COVID before I went into the school. So I know it was a lot to ask for people to come in. Oh, the directors, yes, they were there. I know I'm going to forget somebody out of it, but I do want to thank you, and it was a lot to ask to come for a Sunday morning, so I do appreciate it very, very much, and I hope that the students and the parents also appreciated it, so thank you.
Yeah, no. Great catch, and thank you. I'd like to hope, I don't think it's premature, but I think all of us woke up this morning thinking frigid temperatures. We had like PTSD, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the call about the pipe that just burst at the high school, and so that was comforting. But yeah, that's all I got. I know, I should. All right. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Chonis. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Azanero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any